Today I have with me an amazing couple, Shadrack and Pretty Kubiani, who, though didn't start out in tech, are currently building very innovative tech companies out of Africa. They are the brains behind EFAMA and Coronet Blockchain. They are extremely passionate about equipping professionals in Africa to thrive in the global digital economy. Shadrack, Pretty, thank you for joining me on Career Pathways.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
All
Thank you
right.
kindly.
I am looking forward to a very exciting conversation with you this afternoon. So let's dive in. Let's go into the very beginning. I'd like you to tell us, you both didn't start in tech. Tell us a bit about your background.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thanks again for having us. And I think this is a very important podcast because when it comes to technology, more than ever, now we can participate. And most of the time, people, they just don't know where to start. So it's always important for those who have figured out few things to come back and like share with us, like, what do we do? So on my side, I grew up in a small village in the Eastern Cape, raised by farmers, and my parents ran other businesses as well. For example, we ran a car fixing workshop. So I think that's where the love of engineering, the seed was planted there. Obviously, because it's a village, it was all about fixing cars, fixing anything that is broken, because we had no choice. It was not like a career choice. It was more like we want to survive. And then we ran a wood cutting business as well, where we would sell wood that we collect from the forest. We have all the machinery. People were building with it, and others, so it was used for commercial catering, like bakeries, butcheries, and stuff like that. So part of the wood, my dad would give it to female-led uh, families, because some fathers, it was during the mining boom, they left to go to Joburg. So you find that now there's females that it's not safe for them to just go to the forest because wood was collected by males. So that way of doing business and impacting people around you kind of like grew in me. And I thought that every business by default, whenever you do something, you are making money from that community to also impact community, which came in as a default even to how we're doing business. But later on, I started public relations after my matric. Then after public relations, I found myself back in social CSI, corporate social investments, where we are working with mining communities. Then from there, I started working in management consulting, where we'll have new products, and maybe say a family was just making handbags made out of pure leather, and now they are selling and they want to put it in a shelf of like mainstream retail, and then I would inherit projects like that. So I kept coming through problems, because when a small business has to do business with a big business, the big business always expect the small business to comply at the level of the big business. So quality issues started being a big problem, to say, how do you prove that your bags are genuine leather and things like that? And systems that were there, they were built for corporate, because it makes sense. For example, to say I'm spending 5,000 US dollars every month per product line. If I'm making like 500,000 products, it's cheap. But then if I'm a small business, I'm only making maybe 100 bags a month. Now that begins to be very expensive. So we were actively looking for ways, like, how do we serve our clients? Because this quality issue is becoming an issue. So that's how we actually ended up in technology, in pursuit of that, when we started working with an American company to build a blockchain based technology that will track and trace how products are being made, from ingredients or raw material, until it becomes a product. And we find that software serves customers faster and actually cheaper. And fast forward later, we find ourselves running EFAMA, which is built on that foundation of how do we ensure that food is safe, and make sure that farmers, the smallest farmers, can be compliant at the same level a big farmer can be able to comply, so that they can access markets that demand compliance. So, Shadrack is a different journey.
Thank you kindly. And thanks once again for hosting us. and much appreciated. And greetings to the Career Pathways audiences and family. You know, before I share my side of the journey, I want to pause and acknowledge a very important aspect, especially to those that are either early in their career, or maybe they are in the middle of their career, or some are at a very advanced stage of their career journeys, or career pathing, or career transitions. I spent almost 10 years in corporate before I segued into entrepreneurship. But before I share my humble beginning story and how we both segued into technology, I want to acknowledge something. Despite growing up in a family business, despite growing up in a farming environment, despite leading through corporate for at least a decade, it was only when I met Pretty, and I don't give her credit enough for this. You mentioned earlier on the seeds were planted. I am a byproduct of those same seeds today because I knew strategy, I knew survival, I knew scale through my corporate days and through my lived experience. But the message I have to the career pathing family is that it was when I joined forces with her, we got married, and then we started running our family business together. It was only when I joined forces with her that I got baptized in how important purpose and impact are. Most people, they associate impact and purpose with the nonprofit sector, with with the social good sector, or what do you call it, or social investment. But irregardless of which side of the equation you find your career being in, whether you are running your own business or you're venturing out on your own, or perhaps you are still part of corporate, you've got 9 to 5, if purpose and impact is not part and parcel of your DNA and the fibers of your being and what drives you, I think you'll later realize you are deriving very little to no fulfillment in what you do beyond the paycheck. I just wanted to flag that before I share my humble beginning story. Is that I'm hoping that out of our conversation and out of this, what I regard as a family discussion, because you're pretty much a member of our family, we adopted you, the papers will follow later. So in this family discussion, I'm hoping that those that are enjoying the consumption of the insights from career pathing, I'm hoping that they'll appreciate why impact and purpose is so important. Sometimes we are so caught up with the how to, we are caught up with the engineering, we are caught up with the numbers, we are caught up with profit, we are caught up with customer acquisition. Things are important. And we are also maybe caught up with what's my next career move. We are caught up with promotion. We are caught up with adding digits to our salary or our income. Those things are important, but I just want to flag this because I went through that baptism. Thanks to Pretty's family and particularly her dad, the patriarch who really soaked up the entire family with why impact and purpose is important, along with living for others, being selfless and being others minded. When I got baptized with that reality and I allowed it to fully immerse into everything I do, that is part of how EFAMA emerged. And I just wanted to flag that before I could share my humble beginning journey to date.
Pretty, you can just go ahead to tell us the part that you find most promising that you would advise people who are currently at crossroads to look into as they think about evolving their careers into the technology space.
Thank you so much for the question. So, when you look at the technology today, technologies that actually solve things that people do every day, like communications, we communicate every day. So, one of the technology pathways that people can look at is cloud computing, because even when you are not an engineer, we use cloud every day. If you take pictures and save them on a Google image, you are using cloud. If you're using email, you are using cloud. So everybody, whether you are an engineer or you are not an engineer, all technologies that are built in software, they're actually gonna be using cloud. And AI, a lot of people are nervous about around artificial intelligence because they think it's gonna take people's jobs. But those that are behind artificial intelligence, those that understand artificial intelligence, because it's just a technology, there's people behind artificial intelligence.
Absolutely.
So investing your time learning that, starting small by just courses that take like maybe 40 hours to learn at the comfort of your home. You don't have to jump in now and go back to varsity or anything. Just start small. Just look into those and be able to study. And the good thing about them, you can learn them even without a background in computer science. You can learn because those are new technologies. They've got new rules compared to what we've been learning all these years. It helps when we have a background in computer science, but even without a degree in computer science, you can get into that. So it's one of the low barriers to entry, but very high reward when you actually get to be good at it.
Oh, nice. So, cloud computing, AI, those are areas that people should be looking into should they want to evolve their careers into technology. And there's no need to worry about not having computer background because these are things that they can learn. Shadrach, I don't know if there are additional areas that you think that people can look into, or just those two are the areas that you would recommend.
Most certainly, I do second her in recommending those two technologies. Just a broad basket of what's termed emerging
Mhm.
technologies are very important because technology has got two components of it. There is legacy, that's the past, standing infrastructure, and then there is futuristic or better known as emerging technology. So instead of being stuck in the bygone eras of what technology was or what it is now, one has to always keep their eyesight firmly on the horizon to
Absolutely.
see where technology is going next. I think another terminology is you've got to train yourself as a leader or as somebody who's building a healthy career to think around the bend or to see around the bend, around the curve of where your industry is going, what technology has got to do with it, and what both those realities have to do with
Mm.
you. You can't always be. I would like. We would both like to believe that those that are consuming career pathing insights right now are already, just by tuning into this platform, they are already being futuristic. They're already looking for ways to perhaps borrow some items from our toolbox along with other experts that you've been hosting and that you're going to host. So because they are already thinking like that, let us take this a step further. Always be mindful of where your industry is going, what technology changes that are happening now or are going to happen tomorrow, what they both have to do with you. And that's where you fold up and you get involved. You fold up and you get involved into saying, wow, I better make some improvements. I better put on some thinking caps. I better notch up my game. I better acclimatize to what the future reality looks like, because the word sabotage, if we were to look at historically, it comes from the industrialization age, where factories and plants, industrial plants, were taking over Europe, taking over the Western world, and coming to Africa as well. And people literally, as legend goes, they used to form unionized movements, and they want to take out their shoe and literally throw it inside the grinding machinery in order to try and sabotage the machinery. So the the community of career paths, what do you call it, of career paths can ask themselves a question. Do they want to be throwing their shoes at emerging technology,
Or
or do they want to be pilots in the cockpit that are co-piloting and commandeering where the world is going next, mixing what they know about their industry, what they've qualified in, what they're good at, mixing that with how emerging technology can be the game changer. So they're either leading the conversation, leading the change, or unfortunately, disruption will happen to them and not happen through them.
So I hear something really powerful. And what I'm hearing is AI is good, cloud computing is good, but as a professional, always keep your eyes on the future because it could change in just a short while. So while you focus on technologies that are emerging now, try to keep your eye always on the future to avoid disruptions that throw you off balance in your career. That's so powerful. Thanks for that. So pretty, if there's someone out there who doesn't even know where to begin in terms of getting into tech, and I know that you already started to mention some of it as you spoke, but could you maybe share just a few tips for that kind of person who doesn't know where to start?
That's a good question. So, like I mentioned before, that even when we build technologies, we always start small. To say maybe if you want to build like 10 features, start with just 2 or 3. Test them before you invest too much time. So the good place to start is always micro credentialing. LinkedIn, for example, every year we get 1 month for free, where you can get a professional, even if you don't have money. If you have a LinkedIn account, at least once a year you're going to be able to get LinkedIn Learning, where you get actual certification. They even have exams there that test you on your knowledge and the understanding of what you are studying. So that's a good place to start. Start with courses that you can finish in a week that won't cost you more than like $20, because you can spend like $20 a month and you can study like 20 different things in just 1 month. Then in that way you get to like your foot into that, then you can start building up from there. So my advice is always start with micro credentialing.
So it's about starting small, doesn't have to be too expensive, and you've called it micro credentialing. And just as you were speaking, you started to speak to certifications, which takes me into the very next question that I had on my mind. When we had some backstage conversation, I learned that between the two of you, you have about 70 certifications, which is really remarkable. And in the world of careers, there's always this debate about how relevant certifications are to career growth. And so, can you tell us, firstly, how these certifications have enriched your career? Is it all of them that have been useful, or there some particular or specific ones that are non negotiable, especially for people who want to thrive in the tech space?
Thank you kindly. So I'm not sure how on the wall there are the pillars that we live and lead
Mm,
by. So the first one right here, if I stand here, this one, it says the first pillar of our leadership is learn. It's right here. This is learn. And the second pillar is build. It's
right.
right here. And the third pillar, if I move this slightly, there we go. It's fine. So this third pillar, even though it might be a bit blurred by the light, it's grow. So let me now have a seat to discuss that a bit.
Learn, build,
So those
grow.
are the pillars of our leadership. That's correct. And at the very end is
Mhm.
EFAMA. So that is EFAMA. So EFAMA and our leadership in industry is a byproduct of these three pillars. Is a byproduct of those three pillars. What that has to do with somebody with career growth aspirations is that whatever you build, whether you're building your career, whether you're building some innovation, whether you're building a product or you're building into a project, it doesn't matter. Or maybe you're building it, excuse me, into a community. It doesn't matter what you're building. You could be a policy maker and you're building policy. You could be what do you call it? You could be an engineer. Maybe you're building a solution. You could be a quality tester. Whatever it is that you're building, you could be building a supply chains in retail. It doesn't matter. But the weight of the outcomes, or rather the quality of the outcomes of that decision to build a successful career, to build a thriving leadership track record, begins with the first pillar, begins with learning. Meaning, on the one hand, you want to acquire knowledge. On the other hand, why acquire knowledge informally? Why not formalize that knowledge acquisition beyond school, beyond university, by delving into micro credentialing and starting on the more affordable side? So, learning in our company and in our family is more a culture more than it is an exercise. There's an ongoing need to be adaptable, to be teachable, and to just keep on soaking up knowledge. Whether you are reading some books, one of our favorite family questions when we are around the family dinner table, and when we associate with friends, we ask them, "Who are you reading?" We don't even ask, "What are you reading?" We say, "Who are you reading?" Because the quality of your leadership or the quality of your career, whether in entrepreneurship or in business or in enterprise, is going to rest on the weight of who you surround yourself with. Meaning, show me your teachers, I'll show you, I'll tell you what tomorrow looks like. So the learning pillar is very important, whether through courses, through micro credentialing, or through books, or through seminars or webinars. Be in the constant habit of learning, building. Your learning is of no good unless you are targeting your energies and your time towards a specific goal, a specific purpose, a specific impact. That's why earlier on I did hold back a bit of sharing my humble beginning story, and I flagged something that Pretty mentioned in a humble beginning, that be a person of purpose and be a person of impact, meaning learning gives you competencies, but what you build is going to determine whether you are impacting somebody else's life, you are impacting a territory, an area, a community, and of course, growth. Growth is automatic. There's something in technology and also in the aviation sector called autopilot. What in the aviation they call leaving the plane on autopilot. In innovation or in technology, we call it automation. Growth is automatic. Growth is guaranteed for those that decide to embrace ongoing learning, and those that decide to embrace building something that is bigger than themselves, and building with purpose and building with impact in mind. Then automatically that thing stretches you. You will grow personally, and what you are building will grow, and the company portfolios you are part of, the portfolio size is going to grow. So growth is automatic for those that embrace the first two pillars that our family and company exists by. Without those two pillars and without purpose and impact, a leader will have what looks like a successful career, but they will somewhat have an existential crisis, unfortunately.
Yeah, I hear you. Firstly, I really, really appreciate those pillars that you both have put together in terms of what's guiding you: learn, build, grow. And I absolutely agree that if people learn and they build, I do see that part of the problems that we have in Africa is people who have acquired a lot of theoretical knowledge, but not able to apply it. And so I fully agree and I support the fact that if you learn, you build, it is inevitable, you will grow. And the truth is, and it also came up in your answer. The truth is, if you don't learn, there are just too many problems or challenges in this world that you will become irrelevant. So continuous learning is key. Thank you so much for that powerful answer. All right. Maybe I'll ask Pretty now. Pretty, if someone wants to start, we've been speaking about learning, and there's someone out there who's thinking of a learning path. What would you recommend in terms of a path? Where do they even start from? I hear you when you say micro credentialing certifications. Are there some main ones that they should be looking into?
Absolutely. So, earlier on, Shadrack mentioned something about knowing what's happening in your career. I'm going to pick one technology, for example, artificial intelligence. I recently did about 100 hours of artificial intelligence, and those studies came very handy because later on we were applying for a certain program and we got actually accepted and got funded by a big organization that deals in AI because we have done our homework instead of in terms of studying. So one of the lectures where was explaining how artificial intelligence is consumed in three ways. There's three users of artificial intelligence. There's those that use like technologies like chat, like maybe half the people who are at work today, they have cell phone. You use it even for your not your work. So there's those that actually use it and then they can learn how to use it better at the work that they are doing. For example, if you are just prompting AI for an accounting proposal, for example, you can actually tell because what you can hallucinates a lot. Sometimes it gives you wrong information and it needs you to have a background on the industry and the subject that you are talking about. So it helps that it's an accountant who's actually working with the AI to achieve a certain task. So on its own, even though it is trained with a lot of data from accounting, it still needs that human component. So being able to learn, get certain certifications, you're gonna do your accounting work faster than your peers in the industry. So that's another part that when you are building it, you are building it to use in your industry. You're not changing your industry to work in tech. No, you're still in your industry, but you are just using AI to do your work faster. You can help your customers. Let's say, for example, you are in graphic design. There's a lot of design, video editing, AI that exists today. So when you have learned artificial intelligence in micro credentialing, you can learn to actually make your work to be faster and a better quality, to do better in the career without really changing the career you are in. Then the second user is the engineering part, the people that actually use code to be able to build the technologies we use today. So with those, it's always good to start with macro credentialing of the technology itself, AI. But remember, you're going to use AI to solve a problem, say in agriculture. So you may need to study certain things about farming, about agriculture, because you're not just creating a tag. It's not about features. People don't care at all about what the product does. They don't care who's building the product. What they care about, what can it do for me? So if you don't understand the problems I'm facing, how are you going to build something for me? Why? Because you have a degree in computer science, you think you can solve my problems when you don't even understand what is a day in the life of a farmer looks like, what is a day in the life of a bookkeeper looks like. So you have to study the technology side of it. You have to study the actual industry that you are solving for. And one of the things you cannot escape, you have to study the marketing side of it to say, how do I communicate what I'm doing so that people can understand it? Because if you're coming to me, you're selling maybe a blockchain, the moment you start talking about proof of stake, you're talking about provenance. I'm like, what do you mean? I don't even understand what you are saying. I was in a conference yesterday and this big investment company, they were saying they saw a lot of women, they abandoned application even though they passed, because firstly you scan the QR code and then they can test whether you are ready for investment. They say they will test, they are ready, but then they start asking things like, what's your OPEX, what's your CAPEX, what's your burn rate? Like, I'm not an accountant. How am I supposed to know things like that? So learn how to communicate what you do to the people that are going to use, like, because we don't need to go to school to learn those things. So that's another part you cannot escape. And then the last consumer of technologies as well is people like myself, which are product owners. We always put on a deep end a lot, because on the other side I talk with the business stakeholders. They're telling me that we need to build things that are making us money. And then we talk to engineers. Engineers want to build the coolest stuff that is like is most innovative. So being able to talk to, say, to farmers and understand what's important to farmers, balance what would actually bring money for the company, plus balance what is possible with the engineers is one of those things. So if you are planning, so you can either learn technology to use it to do your work better and more efficient so that you not replace, or you can learn how to build those technologies, or you are learning to oversee teams that are building this technology where you have to like you have to know everybody's job, because how do you tell if someone did a good job if you don't know how to do a job in the first place? So that's why we are always studying, because before I can outsource something to someone, I must have studied it myself. I have a certification, and I've kind of like tried to do it in a practical way so that when a team member is submitting work to me, I can tell that this is not good quality work. But if I didn't know, then I wouldn't be able to tell.
Wow, that was really insightful. And I'll tell you some of the things that stuck with me. So, from a skill stack perspective, you're saying start from where you are, learn how to use AI to do your work more effectively. You had mentioned things about AI hallucinating. People still need to learn how to use it properly. Um, there was the other interesting one you had mentioned about application. You need to understand what problems you are solving, understand the solutions that you're providing. So that was really insightful. Thanks a lot, Preeti. Now, Shadrach, over to you. Um, there's a lot of talk now about AI. Even in our conversation, we've spoken a lot about artificial intelligence already. How is artificial intelligence? How is it reshaping the technology space? And what should professionals be doing right now? What should they be paying attention to so that they still remain relevant in future?
Thank you kindly. Thank you so much. You know, I recall two companies that are the predecessors of
Mhm.
Apple and that are the predecessors of the touch screen in mobile phones. Those two companies are uh, Research in Motion, which used to produce and own the BlackBerry mobile device. And the second company is Nokia from Finland. I believe Research in Motion is from Canada. Nokia is from Finland. These two were giants in their time. While BlackBerry brought emails into your palm, into the palm of your hand, you could receive emails on the go. That was breakthrough. And then, excuse me, Nokia made the most resilient, non-breakable, non-destructible phones and also made them affordably. They were the darling of the mobile device economy, so to speak. However, at the launch of the first iPhone, I believe it was 2006, 2007. Please pardon me on the year there. When the iPhone was launched, it did a couple of things. It collapsed all the buttons into one, and it did away with what was back then called the QWERTY keyboard, whereby you need this entire miniature keyboard on your, I mean, at your fingertips. So back then, if you had to think about it, people were wondering, how far is this going to go? This whole touch screen, simplify life. And yes, to a large extent, companies like Nokia, companies like Research in Motion, your BlackBerry, they took a wait and see approach to watch where this is going. Needless to say, that ended in tears, literal tears, because Nokia CEO had tears flowing down his cheeks when he said that classic, what do you call it, classic speech when he said, we did nothing wrong,
Mm.
meaning they did things as things should have been done. They maintained the status quo. They did everything they were taught and everything they learned in terms of how the mobile phone industry works and is supposed to work. So they gamified this whole thing and they figured out the game. What they didn't realize is that the rules that are dictating the game were changing.
Mm.
What they didn't realize is that the environment in which the game is being played in, the environment was shifting. In the words of the classic book title, Who Moved My
Yep.
Cheese? So they didn't realize that the cheese was moving.
Mm.
So my word in terms of artificial intelligence, decide as a leader and as a career maker and as somebody who's building hopefully a career that will be memorable, profitable, and hopefully impactful beyond your salary. If you are one of the above, figure out whether you want to take a laid back wait and see approach while you are sticking to how homework was being done, or, and much more recommended, what do you call it, fold back your sleeves and get involved in
Mm.
figuring out how AI is moving the cheese in your industry. Now, you may not figure everything out at first. You may not even like AI. You don't have to like AI. I'm not here sitting here advocating for AI, advocating for blockchain. Actually, even though those are the technologies we are using, we are building with, and we are learning, and we are growing as a result, I'm not an advocate to anyone. What I'm an advocate for is ask yourself sobering questions.
Mm.
Be honest with
Absolutely.
self. Have a man in the mirror or woman in the mirror conversation that is AI ultimately moving the cheese? Where is the next cheese station? And am I going to be there at that next cheese station when AI is moving the cheese? Can I figure out AI for myself beyond the hype and beyond the news, good or bad news, regardless of what news are ending up on your radar? Sit up, take AI seriously to the level where you are asking yourself sobering questions. Is AI happening to you, or is AI happening through you to reshape and reimagine your sector? So there's countless different ways that AI is leaving its fingerprints on your sector. As they said in the good old days before streaming platforms, AI is coming to a cinema near you. The question is, are you part and parcel of bringing AI to the cinema near you in your industry? Or are you going to just be greeted by this giant billboard launching soon or showing soon, and you don't know which movie this is? Or are you part of writing the script? Let it not be that AI happens to you, but you figure it out. If it's hype, great. Come through all the facts, come through all the data. There's numerous books on it, there's numerous courses, there's micro credentialing, as my colleague mentioned here. Get to the bottom of figuring it out for yourselves, because lo and behold, we don't want you in whatever industry you are in. We don't want you with tears flowing and you say, we did nothing wrong, or in this case, I did nothing wrong, because there it might be a bit too late. The letters may be going up and the curtains may be coming down on your career. We don't want that. That's what career pathways are about. Find a path, and when you can't find it, map it out through data driven decisions and through intentional decisions and through borrowing insights from the likes of us that are a bit more in our journey. We haven't figured out all the answers, but the ones we have figured out with the other experts that are coming this way might equip you, might help you to shape the path rather than losing your path. Thank you.
Yeah, great stuff. And I like the way you've approached it. So it's really a matter of choice. What you're saying is we can all see how AI is now reshaping things. And there are two options. You either laid back and do nothing about it, or you get involved, learn about this so that you're part of those rewriting the script. And your recommendation is for people to take that challenge, to learn it so that they still remain relevant in the future of work. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I'd now like to explore a bit about regional, or do I call it global careers now? I have noticed for my country, Nigeria, that a lot of our young ones sort of have a notion that they need to leave African soil to do really well in the tech space. What is your perspective regarding that? And anyone can answer.
So I think on my side, I'm gonna answer from the technical perspective. It does help because even for Shadrack and myself, I would say maybe 90, if not 95% of all the certifications, including technologies that we use on daily basis. We use more than 45 technologies to just make EFAMA work with the company, from project management to accounting softwares and everything we use. 95% of it is not from the African soil. It has been built out there. So whether we like it or not, the first world countries have had an advantage of having been doing this for a very, very long time. So for the purpose of best practice and getting skills that are more advanced, it's always good to do that. Even sometimes when we hire a talent from America versus a talent from Africa, there's often a difference. You can tell that people from first world countries started learning technology like very early grades in school. We get to learn that in varsity. And then when we learn it in varsity, in the beginning, you spoke about how sometimes in Africa we are taught to just learn theory. We're not taught to learn things we're gonna use in an actual work experience. Sometimes when I get a graduate in my team on a tech of engineers that comes from a varsity in South Africa or any African country versus ones that come from America, I'm always faced with the fact that they come from varsity. They don't even know what to start to do the job here at work. We have to train them from scratch, and we're like, but we are not an academic institution. We are a small business. All our resources must make us money. Now, if you're going to spend the next 3 months training people, it's costing us on the pocket. And we're grateful because sometimes big corporates and government, they avail a budget to us and say, we're going to give you a budget, take them, train them, and then place them at work. But then when you work with people from the overseas market, especially the first world countries, they have vast amount of experience. While they are still in varsity, they're already working. We get approached all the time, but people that are on their first year in varsity saying, I want to come and volunteer at IFAMA because what I'm learning, I want to be implementing it way before I graduate. So I'm saying that I don't think per se it's a wrong thing for our talent, for our young people and Africans to want to get experience from overseas, to get experience from first world countries. But we need to come back home at some point to implement what we have learned. So I'm just saying that that's my experience in terms of the technical side of things. But Shadrack has had a broader experience in terms of just the careers, the dealing with the people, the characters, the preparation of like, how do you prepare yourself for international careers?
Thank you
So
kindly.
in your
So,
view,
in
just a minute, Shadrach. In Pretty's view, the fact remains that the first world countries are a lot more advanced than us. They've been doing this for so long. Therefore, it is right for our um, early career and middle career professionals to aspire to want to go to those first world countries. But then I love how you have balanced it to say that, well, at some point, you should then decide to come home to apply what you've learned. Thank you for that. It looks like you do have an additional point, Shadrach. You can go ahead, please.
thank you. So, the writing is on the wall.
Mm,
We can't ignore it. And maybe even more than being on the wall, the writing is all around us. For political leaders and those that are shaping African economies, whether through politics, through policy, or through any other components that are shaping the growth of African economies, to those elders and to those leaders, the writing is, at some point or the other, we have to all wake up to the reality that we are living in the global economy.
Right.
Globalization is no longer a thing of the past. I still remember I was in my early varsity days in the early 2000s. I'm hinting at my age here. And that's when I first heard about globalization. It sounded like such a mouthful word. But remember, in the early 2000s, there was no Facebook, there was no Twitter, also known as X. There was no Cheyenne or Sheen. There was no Temu. There was no a whole lot. There was no LinkedIn and there was no YouTube. All these applications that are globalizing knowledge, whether it's what do you call it, quick hacks or tips, or even Coursera or Udemy or online learning, these things did not exist. So globalization sounded like a bit of a mouthful. But now fast forward to what do you call it, to the 2020, where whatever technologies were there now either had to pivot. I mean, there was no Zoom, there was no remote working, there was Skype was there, but I mean, not in the early, but later Skype arrived on the scene, vanished-ish. And even later on, MySpace came in and did their round there and went to the back burner of technology. But my point is, globalization is no longer a concept or a theoretical reality that we can discuss in academic corridors. Globalization is right here.
Right
The mere
before us.
fact that from Lagos you can pick up your mobile device and order pizza from London to Lagos, and from your mobile phone you can in Lagos or even in Johannesburg, you can order a ride through a ride sharing app, or you can order produce directly from the farm. It's showing that, you know what, the retailers have to now compete with farmers, and African economies have to compete for talent with the offshore economies. They need talent. The Western world is aging at a pace that they are unable to replenish their youth or replenish their talent at the required rate. And yet they have muscle memories, they have resources, they have finances that are appealing to Africa's youth and Africa's emerging leaders. So that tug of war for talent is not going away anytime soon. But perhaps my neat message or my neat reminder to policymakers and political leaders is that you are now forced to compete for talent at a global scale. Yes, I agree with Pretty that hopefully whatever our youth or our emerging leaders learn overseas, they will at some point decide to come back home. However, we as African economies and we as African entrepreneurial leaders or even political leaders, we have to create something appealing for them to come back. We have to offer them a package that makes sense. We have to create or build the middle pillar. We have to build solutions that are sizable enough, big enough, and that are solving purposeful or impactful problems that are scary enough that the leaders will feel stimulated or challenged or engaged. If we don't, we're not going to have a captive audience of talent. So all of us, even a startup like EFAMA, we are competing for talent globally. If we make an offer to someone from Lagos, from Johannesburg, we must know that a Silicon Valley-based startup may counter-offer EFAMA's offer. So what is the incentive to come and work for EFAMA? What is the incentive to come and work for a local telecommunications giant or come to work for an African-based banking giant? Is there an incentive? Does the purpose resonate with an African leader or an emerging leader? Does the impact, is it sizable enough? Does it speak to the values of that leader, or are they going to get on the next plane? So that is something that we all have to see, that the writing is all around us. We are operating and leading entities in a global economy. We are shaping Africa's economy around the global economical context. The war for talent is just going to get more fierce from now on. Are we incentivizing Africans not to leave? Because there's three talks in careers. Hashtag I'm staying in Africa, hashtag I'm living on the next plane, or hashtag I'm returning. Irregardless of which dialogue you are part of, the question is Africa pulling up its socks? Is Africa collaborating at scale? Is Africa innovating at scale? Is Africa offering competitive rates and solving challenges that are attractive enough for African emerging leaders not to leave, and those that have left to come back and plow back that intellectual capital back into Africa? Then you know what? It's a fair game. It's a fair game. If you look at the manufacturing fields of Detroit in America, they lost what do you call it? They lost manufacturing opportunities to China. If you were to look at even most of Europe, they lost their manufacturing opportunities to China. And this does not in any way mean to demonize China. It's meant to remind us that it's fair game. It's open. The global economy is open for business. Are we going to what do you call it, pull up our socks and compete at that global level? When we began building EFAMA, we knew that we can't compromise on standards, we can't compromise on values, we can't compromise those 45 technologies that Pretty is talking about. That's because EFAMA is conscious that we are operating at a global level, even though we are retaining our local relevance. It doesn't mean that we can use African time or African quality standards. There is no such in technology. We have to punch beyond our weight, and we have to maintain territory to show that just because it's made in Africa, it doesn't speak of substandards, and it doesn't speak of, oh, work for EFAMA, feel sorry for us. No, we don't deserve anyone's sympathy. Work for EFAMA because it's exciting to work here. It's engaging,
Absolutely.
it's challenging, and wait for it, it's rewarding. That's a message for all leaders, whether political or entrepreneurial. The writing is all around us.
That was really packed. That was so packed, Shadrach. And I mean, just being able to have a conversation today. I'm sitting in Lagos, Nigeria, and you are in South Africa. That shows us that globalization is really with us. And I hear you. I do hear you loud and clear. The war for talent is fierce. It will continue because the developing countries will continue to take they've made it attractive, and so our young professionals want to go that way. And I love the perspective you've brought, that if we do want them to come back and plow back, then our policymakers, those that are building companies in Africa, need to ensure that whatever it is that we are offering is at par, is competitive. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to get this talent back into Africa. Thanks a lot for that, Shadrach and Preeti. Okay. Um.
Uh, Thank you so much. If I may add one
All right.
point, my apologies. There's this thing of the multiple generations in the
Mm-hmm.
workplace. Your boomers, your millennials,
Gen Zs.
your Gen Zs, and your so there's an interesting thing, and I dread it that the world is going there, but we are going there. It might even come to a point where for eFarmer to recruit in Johannesburg and in Lagos and in Mombasa or in Nairobi, we might have to set up a London office, and we might have to set up a Silicon Valley office or a Dubai office just to export African talent to Dubai, to London, or to New York. Do I like it? I don't like it. My HR doesn't like it. Our legal doesn't like it. Our tax experts, because that's going to be a tax nightmare in terms of opening up all these offices, because certain generations, whether Gen Z or Gen Alpha, they want to work in an Instagrammable city where every angle of that city is Instagrammable. I would like to think that where EFAMA is headquartered, which is Sandton, the richest square mile on the African continent, I would like to think that that is Instagrammable. However, some people's version of what's Instagrammable could be London, could be Copenhagen, could be Brussels, could be New York, or even Dubai. So do I like that? I don't like that, but that's a reality. What would you do to attract and retain talent? I mean, it even gets to a point where in technology, your coffee has to be of like another quality. You have to know the point of origin. It has to be single source, not multi-source. Like, why are we talking about coffee? I thought we were talking about technology and building a tech team, a marketing team, a finance team that's going to shoot out the lights. But apparently, your environment, as you can tell, our office has to be Instagrammable. You can't have dingy lights. You can't be in the dangerous part of the city. You have to be in the heart of things, in the richest financial square mile. Later on, you might have to open a Dubai office, not because Pretty and Shadrack wanted to, or not because our investors were ready for that office, but because talent might nudge us in a direction where we have to diversify globally so that EFAMA is not only global by the quality of our code or the quality of our brand, but we might have to be global much quicker because the war for talent is fierce and we want to be relevant, including hiring European talent. I mean, we've got some talent in the US right now as we speak. So we've got talent in Nigeria, in Ghana, but that talent, most of it is remotely. I wonder at what point we have to ship Ghanaian and Nigerian and Kenyan talent to London or to Johannesburg because they want the paycheck and great coffee and an Instagrammable location. Do I like it? I don't, to be quite honest, because I know our investors are not going to like it, but our farmers are going to love it because when our talent is at ease, they will design and develop those building those solutions that learning is informing them so that the company can grow and our impact can grow. I just don't like those beats where we have to open up offices in locations that we're not ready for. But the war for talent is fierce and we have to contend with that so that unlike the Nokia CEO, we don't say we did nothing wrong.
Absolutely. Thanks for that reflection. And I mean, you're right. We already now have the Gen Alphas in the workplace, the Gen Zs. These people they were born into technology and they're on Instagram most times of the day and they see what's obtainable outside there. So we really need to reflect and see how this talent exchange can work. And I also like the part that even talent from the United States maybe come and they're working here in Nigeria, a lot of them, or even in South Africa. So thanks a lot for that reflection. Now there's another category of people that probably don't want to leave the African soil, but they also want to access global opportunities. So are these kind of opportunities available? And if they are available, how can our African talent position themselves for these global opportunities? Pretty, I imagine you would like to take that.
Yes, yes. So, in terms of how they can prepare themselves to be relevant, I'm going to give that one to Shadrach. But in
Okay.
terms of like, how do we access these opportunities? Unfortunately, now there's a lot of documentaries around our very own Africans that live in London, live in US, scamming ones that are back home because they know everybody is desperate for the dollars and the euros. Everybody wants to work for an international companies. So for me, I would say first and foremost, look through reputable platforms in order to be able to apply for that. To be knowledgeable, you need to know how much does a cloud architect earn. Let's say, for example, a cloud architect earns say $5,000 a month at a very entry level. It's just an example. But then if you meet someone who says you're gonna earn 200, I mean $2,000, it may not actually be true. But then if you didn't know in the first place, so educate yourself in terms of like international markets? How much do they pay? How does the process usually work? So that you can tell when it's actually not true. And it's said that most of the time it's the people that are already in these countries that are exploiting people who are desperate for these opportunities. So educate yourself. Also find a reputable platform to look for work from abroad. So in terms of how do you prepare yourself culturally and to be able to fit in, because I think that these what do you call it, most companies and even in first world countries are not going to change their cultures for us. You're going to have to learn what's the culture that side. So I think I would hand that over to Shadrack in terms like how do you prepare yourself to fit in?
Thank you
Yep,
kindly.
and that's while they're
So,
still based here in Africa.
Yes.
that's correct. So, culture is key. Culture is very key when it comes to participating gainfully and sustainably in the global
Mm.
economy, even if you do so remotely from your corner of Africa or from the comfort of your home or from staying within your city. Remote working, there are devices, there are tech platforms that make it possible for, there are productivity managing applications, there are meeting platforms, and there's a whole lot of way to function in what I call the collaborative economy. There's a different variety of, there's a variety of ways to collaborate globally without leaving your location. But what all these technologies will never give you and can never be outsourced to these technologies is your willingness as a remote worker or remote employee or remote team member. It's your willingness to immerse yourself into the culture of the locality where the decision makers are sitting or where the weight of your team is sitting. That cannot be excused. You know, the remote working part of the team in Africa, it faces the same dynamics in a
Right,
way of those that are leaving
right.
Africa. Whether you are leaving Africa and going to the west or you're going to the east, whether you are leaving Africa or you are staying in Africa, the minute you get paid in a different currency, there is a culture that is aligned in that currency. If currency is hard cash inside an envelope reaching your office, then the envelope itself is the culture.
Mm.
Even if the currency hits your bank account digitally, there is a proverbial envelope around that currency. Let's be mindful of the envelope because the envelope is the context within which remote working is made possible and is sustained. So let me give you an example. Back in my corporate days, I learned very quickly that corporates and startups and the government or public sector, they speak English, but they don't speak the same kind of English. When someone is saying, let's align diaries, or when government employees, particularly in South Africa, when members of the public sector, they like calling each other colleagues, you know, on emails and even in person, they'll say, dear colleagues. And there's a certain way that they mention that colleagues. So colleagues to them is not the same as colleagues in corporate or in large enterprise. Colleagues in, you see now how I move from
Yeah.
countries to industry sectors. Colleagues in enterprises or in corporates just basically means peer to peer, or it means we are team members, colleagues in the original sense of the English word. But colleagues in the public sector or in government tends to mean we are fellow
Mm.
comrades. We have a shared goal. We have a shared vision. We have a bond. So the day somebody, maybe you are coming from the private sector, maybe EFAMA is working with the public sector, the day they call you colleague, you must know that they're saying you're one of us. We don't see you as Pretty and Shadrack, those guys that are in the startup economy, and we want to have an arm's length relationship with them. The day they say, colleagues, here's what we're going to do next. They mean a fellow comrade. They mean you are one of us. So let's be mindful of different terminologies. Let's be mindful of different nuances. Let me give you another example. In Japan, it's a bit more on the generalist side, but it's an
Yeah.
educated guess. In Japan, putting in extremely long hours, whether you are working in person or remotely, is seen as a mandatory thing. And without actually casting a negative shadow on Japan, but sometimes contracts are seen as a suggestion when it comes to how much
Put
hours
in.
to put in. It's like a standard for you. You know how there's this saying in retail therapeutic circles, shop till you
Yeah.
drop. In Japan, we've got to
What?
appreciate that you actually have to work till you
Mm,
drop. So that is in no way me now casting a negative light on Japan. I'm just flagging that if you are a remote worker and you go like, well, I'm going to do a 9 to 5. Firstly, what is the time difference between Lagos and the specific city that you are remotely working for in Japan? So even outside of the cultural context or cultural currency, are you mindful of the time differences? Number one. Number two, are you mindful of the cultural differences? Are you mindful of the what do you call it? How meetings are conducted? Who speaks first? Who speaks last? Who gets to contribute? Are you mindful of? I'm going to give you another culture. This one I landed in corporate. It doesn't have to do with Japan. In corporate, one of the reasons why people are maintaining a very strong email logging during projects, it's actually not because they want to be effective. It's not because they want to contribute. Not all the time. Some of the time, yes. But sometimes in corporate, people are so big on emails. Do you know why that is? It's because they want to cover
yeah.
themselves because they expect something to go wrong tomorrow. So I want to be able to put it on the record. So it's almost like in corporate, we are trying to catch each other that something is going down here. Someone is going down. So let's say you're moving from startup into corporate, or you're moving from one country where emails are not a big deal into a country where emails are a big deal. And you find that whenever they CC all and they're speaking to a specific person, you never acknowledge. Meanwhile, in that particular country, they might expect that everybody on that email chain must acknowledge and note receipt of what's not even addressed to you. So, do you know the culture, even though you are a remote worker? Do you know? Maybe I'm going to give another example. At the beginning of meetings, there's this thing called
Yep.
icebreakers, small talk. Maybe you come from an economy anywhere in Africa where once the meeting opens, we get down to business and we just get on with it. Meanwhile, that may be seen to be rude. It might actually be the opposite sometimes. You might have to come in and you might have to mention how are the kids, and maybe they even want to know how your pet is doing. And if you don't own a pet, you are seen as the odd one out, or you are seen as the creepy one because who doesn't own a cat?
Yeah.
If you're not a cat mommy or a puppy mommy, something is wrong with you. Now, like Pretty said, we are not going to try and change these
Hmm.
cultures where we are being engaging. Whether in EFAMA's case, our investors come from there, our stakeholders come from there, or in the case of those that are mapping out career pathing, maybe your employer comes from there, or your top clients on behalf of your employer, they come from there. So learn the culture as a currency by itself, but there's something I want to flag as I pause this point. Learning the culture doesn't necessarily mean changing who you are.
Absolutely. And
It
we're going to
means
get into
being
that. We're
yourself.
going to get into that in the next question.
Yes.
So thank you for that. And just to
Thank you, Kat.
rehash my key takeaways from, how to access these global opportunities, to what they also need to do to be able to stand out. Pretty did mention very great points around reputable job boards. I mean, there's a lot of scams that we've heard about where people just go to job boards that are not really reputable and they get their fingers burnt going to those. And then also just doing research, because that then helps you to really be able to negotiate, and also avoid falling into the hands of scammers as well. So those were really fantastic points, and you really really hashed on the point of cultural nuances, cultural sensitivity, and I like the way you put it. It's immersing yourself in the culture. If you want to be a global employee, it is important, whether you are in Africa working remotely or you are based there. Very important that you are aware of cultural sensitivities, because there are things that you could say that mean something else there. And something that came out as well, Shadrach, I did hear you talk about even being aware of the politics within the organizations or the systems where you are. There are certain subtle politics that are ongoing, and you can't just, have your arms thrown up in the air. You need to understand these things so that you are able to thrive and build a successful career wherever you find yourself. So that was great. Now we're slowly moving into um, the global opportunities. When our colleagues, our entry mid-level career people get these opportunities, what we are finding is that they then begin to change or shift their identities. So from things like even accents, we don't know if they're under pressure to change their accents, even the names. So Nigeria, where we have a lot of long names, people find ways to shorten their names or make it a bit more funkified. So how would you suggest that professionalism is balanced with authenticity? And perhaps you understand some of the reasons why people do these things. Are they under pressure when they get into these global communities? What's your take, Shadrach?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and that's a tough one at the
Uh-huh.
same time, because as Africa, we are a community. It's a community of 54 states, and within those states, there is cultural identities, there is language, you know, food, language, and culture form the super glue that binds us together. Food,
Language,
language,
culture.
and culture. So I think if we're to look inwardly before we look outwardly at those that are shortening their names, changing their accents for the good or the better, it doesn't matter. Let's have a self mirror reflection as Africans. Let's have that. Do we really want to hold ransom or hold hostage one of us that is funkifying their name or shortening their name or changing their accent in order to pay bills?
Mm,
Let's ask ourselves that question first and foremost, that do we really want to hold them ransom and say, you traitor, or you are betraying us, or you are betraying our common good or our common identity that makes us African brothers and sisters? Do we really want to be guilty as charged? If the charges were to be leveled against us, that we held someone captive and we asked them, whether outwardly or in a subtle way, how dare you shorten your name? And how dare you add a twang to your accent? If that helps them to not only pay bills, but support their children and hold their family together, I think us as the broader African community, we want to tread gently around that. But at the same time, there's this notion of, are they being a sellout? Are they being a traitor? That's a very interesting open-ended discussion. Let me ask a second question that I want to attempt to answer that one. Are they doing that to better connect globally? Are they shortening their name so that it will be relatable globally? Are they changing their accent so that they'll be understood globally beyond their local context? Are they doing that? Because if they are, then we can, in linguistic terms, we can call them bilingual.
mm,
It means they are keeping their local heritage, they're keeping their local accent or their local lingo, while also learning a secondary lingo or secondary language, how they pronounce things, how they say I am Dayo instead of saying I'm Adebayo, or I am Olu instead of saying I'm Olusegan. Do forgive me, Nigeria, if I'm mispronouncing this word. I'm just trying to make some examples. So is let's take Olu. Is Olu trying to be globally relevant? I think as the African community, we might want to cut Olu some slack. We might give what we may want to collectively give Olu the benefit of the doubt. However, if Olu is trying to do that for the wrong motives or for the wrong reason, or because they are having a midlife crisis or they are having an identity crisis in their early 20s, we may or may never know. However, let's understand what's important about communication. It's important. I think it was Sir Bernard Shaw from England, the late Sir Bernard Shaw, who said the most challenging thing about communication is the assumption that it is actually happening when it may not be happening. So if I cling on to my South African accent, which I believe it does exist, but I'm in America and I refuse, to learn that localized American, I'll call it an American expression of English, you may find that people in America are seeing me as that South African who is proudly and strictly South African. Here's where it's going to catch me. They're going to say Shadrack is not one of us.
Absolutely.
Now, there's a bit of a catch there. And if he's not one of us, let's kind of like hold back on the value. Let's hold back on the American dollar size checks. Let's hold back on this. Let's hold back on that, because he's not one of us. He's an outsider to our culture and to how we speak. But there's a catch. To what extent should Shadrach learn the American accent in order to use it when needed and when the context is right, so that he's not seen to be ridiculing the American accent or even butchering it? Or even in Nigeria, there's a certain way that English is spoken in Nigeria. My wife and I were even laughing about it to say, you know what? The Nigerian approach to English is so rich. I'll give you an example. Right here in our office, in the parking, we've got one of our Nigerian colleagues who works with us. He's an expert. He's a consultant who consults with us. So he drove to our office. He's based here in South Africa. He drove to our office and I asked him, wait, there were these two traffic cones that were protecting your parking so that it's not taken by the other companies that are using, that are in proximity to our parking bays. Did you find those traffic cones in your parking bay when you came yesterday afternoon? Because they seem to have been removed either by security or those that are working in the parking office or the control room. What the Nigerian gentleman said was so fascinating. It was English, but his choice of words, and it's funny because there was no accent. He was typing on WhatsApp. He said, "You know what, sir? I think they were harvested from the parking bay before I arrived." Now, when you mention harvest, to Pretty and I were thinking crops. We didn't think that parking cones can be harvested. That is not something that is typically South African in our vocabulary. Even though the gentleman was typing, he was not kind of like coming across with a Nigerian accent. He was typing on WhatsApp. In the absence of his accent, his choice of words and his approach to English, which was a much milder version to one of the Nigerian policymakers and politicians who visited South Africa. And he mentioned something along the lines of, I don't mean to make fun of it because he's my elder. I'm just referencing him. He mentioned something along the lines of speaking very bombastic English when one of our local media houses interviewed him. He said, that is Adifero Saga. That is Krinka
Oh
Kronka.
yeah.
That is, I'm
I
actually
think I relate. I think I know who you're speaking about. And thanks a lot.
yes.
Thanks a lot, Shadrach. Very rich insights that you have shared. But what jumps at me is that you're saying to us to extend grace to our brothers and sisters who are out there who, for reasons we don't know, have shortened their names, are changing their accents. It could be that it is so that they could connect better. And we've just said again that they have to be culturally sensitive. So perhaps that's what they're doing. And so we should extend them that grace because at the end of the day, they are hustling, they are trying to make those dollars to support their families as well. That was really powerful. Thank you so much. Now, I know that you employ a number of remote workers, and I've possibly even experienced some sort of frustrations with this talent. What are some of the frustrations that you've experienced, and how have you navigated this? And I ask this question so that our early and mid career professionals can understand the things that frustrate founders so that they can sort of adhere or be compliant and have a mindset shift.
Thank you so much. Excuse me. I'm going to let Pretty lean forward to give her version as our tech lead at
Yeah.
EFAMA. And I'm going to now later lean forward from a talent perspective. But I think there's a line that anchors our lived experiences: traditional values and innovative
Mm.
ideas, or where tradition intersects with innovation. There are certain old school values and old school principles that will never get
Mm.
old. Let all the 5 generations in the workplace take careful note of that. And on that note, I'm not sure if Pretty would like
Thank
to
you. Thank
lean
you for
forward on
that
that.
background.
Yeah. Yes, yes. No, absolutely. So I think one of the challenges that have come to is legal compliance, in terms of sometimes people feel like if you are in South Africa, even if they sign the contract with you, they can breach the contract, because where are you going to find
Mm.
them?
Really?
Not realizing that the tech space is very small. The chances of you doing something, of me doing something wrong to one company and 10 other companies find out, are very, very high. So we have found out that some remote workers in the African continent, they actually are quick to just sign a contract because they're not planning to honor it, because they know you wouldn't find them anyways if they were not compliant with the contract itself. So that is a very a big concerning challenge in terms of that. That's why sometimes we end up working with reputable talent sourcing organization that will be the ones that hold people accountable. Then you now start to use referrals, which sometimes it's like it sometimes becomes unfair, because it's like, so if I'm not part of that ecosystem, I'll never find out about opportunities, because we are not no longer going to go and post opportunities in the open. We're only going to deal with talent managing types of organizations that we can know that, you know what, because you are there, we're gonna give the contract to you and you source the talent for us and you handle the risk. So now that closes other people who may not even afford to be
Yeah.
part of organizations like that. They don't know about organizations like that, but it's our way of coping in the moment. I'm just saying people need to be aware and see if they can start working with talent sourcing organizations, or get good references that they can use to know that. But if you've been paid and you didn't do the work according to the quality, how do I make you accountable for that? Because you already know that I'm not going to fly to Nigeria. It's more expensive for me to fly there and find you than actually what I've already paid you. So that's one of the biggest challenge that on my side I have come across, in terms of the global, I mean, the African continent is itself. It's not a Nigerian problem, it's not a South African problem. Everywhere that has been some of the problems that has been. So I think the second problem as well, it comes from gender types of relations, because sometimes in the African continent we were raised to like saying men do not answer to women at all. So now even if you're not working in another country, so now when you come in the workplace, you may need to answer to a woman who may even be younger than
Mm.
you, because now we were raised like that in Africa. Like in my village, if someone is 4 years younger than you, you're not allowed to call them by your name. But later on, when I'm like 20 years older than someone and I have to report to that person, all my life I've been brought up to say a person who's 4 years younger than me doesn't have a say at all in anything that is happening. So sometimes we now and then we come across cultures like that, that in the beginning you find out that someone was surprised that they needed to answer to a female tech lead. But the majority of them, as the time goes, they get over that shock and start to realize, because in our environment, we work with people as human beings. We don't use that thing because it's exhausting to boss people around. You work with people to say, guys, we're building something. If I give you systems, me personally, I like to manage systems. I don't like to manage people. So if I gave you systems to say, when you work, for example, everything you do, log it on Jira. Because at 12 o'clock in the night, I can check. Oh, you finished your work. I don't like having to go and ask you and sit on your neck and ask you, are you doing your job? We've put systems. Let's use the systems that we use. Then I can manage the systems and not manage you, and I can manage the process and you fit into that. So those are some of the things, because that's all we can do. All we can do, we can have a legal structure, and then we can have systems. So if you have a problem with these two things, it becomes difficult to work with you, especially if you're not here at the office where we can talk. I don't know where you live, because you are like far away. I can't find you. So those are the challenges that are faced on an operational
Thank
level.
you.
So on a human management, I think Shadrack will chip
Yeah,
in
but
there.
thank you so much for calling those out. I'm actually quite surprised that people sign contracts and right from the beginning they already have a mindset that they're not going to honor it, and that must change. So we're calling that out today on Career Pathways. Please, when you sign contracts, do make sure that you are planning to honor those terms in the contract, because I mean, here what Pretty has said, they've had to now take those opportunities and share them with um, outsourcing companies, and what you've literally done is that, you know, some of the professionals are now preventing people who otherwise would have seen those jobs if you had posted them on job boards. But now you've had to develop your own coping mechanisms. I also did hear about people taking jobs and not delivering the quality of work that is expected. I heard about people not wanting to be accountable. Hey, professionals, these are the things that need to change. If we really want to build meaningful, successful careers, we need to look into those things. So over to you, Shadrach. Looks like you had some additional points for us.
Thank you kindly. At a high level, revenue is important, income is important. What you get paid at the end of the month as somebody who is shaping your career pathway is important. But what is equally is important alongside your revenue, your personal income, is your
Mm,
reputation. Without a good reputation, without a good name, without a name that is synonymous with results, with on time delivery, with exceeding expectations, with showing up on time for meetings, with delivering ahead of schedule. If your name is not synonymous with those things, I think you are going to have a challenge mapping out and pursuing or implementing a healthy, sustainable, profitable career
mm,
pathway. So, hence, I said tradition colliding with innovation. There are certain things that will never go out of fashion. It will never go out of fashion to be punctual. It doesn't matter whether you're working remotely or in person. Don't be on time. Don't be on time. Show up ahead of time and make that your default setting. Number one. Number two, when it comes to immersing yourself on the true north of the company that you want to work for, immerse yourself in that true north. Know why that company exists. That will never go out of fashion. Some people think because ChatGPT is here, it will spew out all the answers they need about the company or the industry. Still, you still have to have a genuine interest in the company you aspire to work for, You still have to be a team player who actually shows that when you show up at work, you actually want to play in the team. You're not trying to be the star player with all the answers, the star player who wants to shine alone. It's not about shining alone. The star of the show at EFAMA, there's only two: the buyers who consume EFAMA products and the farmers who produce those products. Those are the stars of the show, not Shadrack and Pretty. Well, you know what? As good looking as we are on the screen, if I say so myself, it's not about the good looks. Neither is it about about our 70 micro credentials or certificates. Neither is it our combined 30 years experience in business. That is nice, but the industry only cares what is Shadrack, Pretty, and the EFAMA team. Do they exist for the industry? Do they exist for the farmers? Are they helping farmers to sleep better at night? Meaning, at the end of the day, what will never get old, what will never be too old school, and will still be relevant even in the era of AI is stop existing for yourself. You can't be selfish and build a healthy, successful career pathway. You can't. A career pathway is where you are building increasing income, you are adding digits as equally as your reputation or your CV is exceeding you. I mean, it's preceding you. Your CV or your name must show up ahead of you. When I look you up online, have a online presence that is relatable. You can't be posting certain hideous things online and you expect Pretty or the hiring managers or the team leaders to overlook that, or worse, they can't find you anywhere. What is happening? Don't you have an online presence? Don't you have an online visibility? Yet you want to work remotely, but you don't have a remote brand. That is colliding with your career pathways intentions. So let's be intentional. Let's be innovative at the same time. Let's build brands, personal brands that are showcasing us in a positive light. But those brands must never exceed or outpace our ability to actually deliver the goods when we are hired, or deliver the goods when, in our case, our career, we get funded. When we are funded, we must still deliver the goods. We must still punch beyond our weight. We must still shoot out all the lights. Last but not least, Peter said that it's a small world. This tech world is a small world, and that is true. I'll give you an example. One of our colleagues in industry, he's actually one of the managers here at EFAMA. He previously, at his other company, not at EFAMA, he worked closely. He hired an engineering expert. He hired a software engineer that believed he was so fabulous that he didn't need to listen to instruction. He was so fabulous that he did not need to be held accountable. He was so fabulous that he felt he could just run the show and do unethical things. So as a result, when when one of our managers was at that company, he was called for a reference. Do you know so and so? Let's call him Dean. They say, do you know Dean? He said, give me Dean's surname. Dean's surname is so and so. Okay, I know him. How can I help? They say, would you say that he is good at his work? And I think this manager gave one of the shortest character references I've ever heard. He said, if you are looking for someone to break your technology, to steal your intellectual property, and to upset your entire team, and to compromise your technology in a way that it moves away from a customer centric approach. If you're looking for all those things and some spice in between, then Dean is your go-to
What a
guy.
reputation.
Dean is the person you must employ.
What a reputation.
There we go. And needless to say, they just left Dean. They never hired him. So let's be conscious that certain things will never get old. Your name, your reputation must be important to you if you're going to map out or implement a healthy, successful, sustainable career
Thank
pathway.
you. Thank you so much. That was a lot of nuggets packed in one question, and I'll try to summarize very quickly what I heard is beyond technical knowledge, because typically the tech people have to get their credentials and so they have the technical knowledge. But beyond that, to build a meaningful career in the tech space, there are still traditional things that are extremely important and we should continue to pay attention to. Reputation is key, especially in a world where now our Gen Zs, the alphas really like to be on social media. They also need to be very careful in terms of what they post on social media. And we've all seen what even the United States government is doing now, where they are looking at people's profiles and the kind of things that they post online. So that's really important. I even love the fact that you spoke to the very basic things, such as punctuality. Those things never get old, they do not go out of fashion. And you've also spoken about people who don't even have an online presence in 2025. People should also check that. It's quite important that you are being found when your name is searched online. So that's something that professionals should bear in mind. I do know that there are people who still think that personal branding or online visibility is not important. But thank you for again um, really putting it out there that it is important. And, Pretty also said it's a small world, and it really is. I work in the human resource space, so I definitely know what you're talking about. People are reference checking. And here you gave us that that really funny character reference, and what a reputation for someone to build for themselves. So early, mid-career professionals, whatever stage you are in your career, please be aware of these things if you're really looking or serious about building a meaningful career. All right, thanks a lot. So, you both have been really successful at raising funding for your ventures. Um, what would you advise a founder who's looking to raise funding? What would your advice be? What are investors typically interested in?
Yes, so I think from we've spoken about this even in terms of careers to say you need to start where you are. You need to be able to do something with actually the resources that you have. So the first step also is to invest in yourself, because even in the career matters, in the beginning, all the time people are gonna invest in you. They're not gonna invest in your company because remember your company is not
Mm,
known, your company hasn't made money yet. Maybe after 3 years, 5 years, people are going to look at your balance sheet and they can see, okay, if we put in this amount, this is what we're going to get. But if your company is new, they are looking at the ability that can you actually do what you say you can do? Do you understand the industry like you can be able to be successful in it? Do you have technical capabilities to do the work that you say you're going to do in the company? Do you have the knowledge? Do you know how to sell the idea to investors, to customers, to even your team members that have to come and build with you? So they look at all those skill competency that is technical in terms of being able to do, and they look at your management skills, because everyone that's going to come and work for you, you're going to go to have to sell, you're going to go to have to manage the team. So you are the first investor to first and foremost invest in
mm,
yourself, be able to do those things. Some things don't come natural to all of us. Like, for example, I'm a systems person, I'm more comfortable around computers, but I had to go and learn public speaking. I had to go and learn how to sell because I should be able to do, because Shadrack deals with the business side. But for us to convince investors, I had to, both of us, we had to prove that if we were not together, could I still do the job that Shadrach is doing? Can he still do the job that I'm doing? So now you find out that every certificates we get the same certificates, even though we do different Rose, when it comes to the second and last person I will mention, being resourceful as well. There's certain things that you need to be able to learn. We needed to learn how to do branding. We needed to learn how to do coding from scratch, building our website, building our logos, building our social brand as well. Like one of the good example is that whenever we go to events, whether we're exhibiting, yesterday we were exhibiting at a very big conference, and because I was telling you about it early, because it had high profile individuals, we were not told in time in terms of like because you have to apply it's by invitations only. They would approach you and say you are doing something, we invite you to come to that event. And then when you've applied, they don't tell you you're approved. They only tell you within like 24 hours that you've been approved. And then you get the events details maybe like 12 hours into the events. So it was very difficult for us to source things to display, but mostly we bring a photographer wherever we go because we want to be able to profile the things that you are doing because we are selling as we go. So because we couldn't find a photographer on time, we knew that was going to happen. So Shadrack and I, we had to go and take photography lessons so that when we can hire a photographer on time, we're going to be able to know how to profile the work ourselves. So what I'm saying is you have to be resourceful before you ask for people's resources to come and join, because people are always going to ask you. There's a word they like when we're raising funding, say, what's your traction?
Mm.
Meaning, what have you achieved so far on your own before we can come and help you out?
Wow. Thanks for those very practical guidelines. I'm sure that founders who are listening to us will find them extremely insightful. What I do here is you need a pedigree, amongst other things that you have stated. So, as we are winding down, as we begin to wind down on the program, I would like to go now into some softer issues. As a couple, that's working together. You've got great ambitions, and there's a family also on the other hand. How do you balance these things, your self care, your family, and the ambitions that you have?
Thank you kindly. You know, I think it boils down to
Mhm.
discipline and roles, or discipline and hats that one gets to wear. And what that means is, I recall we were watching a documentary about a historical kingdom that actually existed in the East. And in that kingdom, there was what do you call it, the head of the royal family, who was the king. And that head of the royal family had a son who was an heir in waiting. And to try and train the son to successfully inherit the throne one day, the father, His Majesty the King, used to send this son on little assignments, to go and handle miniature portions or solve some specific but not too significant kind of challenges. And the son, because let's just say the son was the ancient version of Gen Z, even though we love our Gen Zs. So the son tended to argue with the boomer, with the generation boomer, the dad. And the son used to say, but dad, why do you want me to do it this way? But dad, there was a lot of rebuttal statements, and there was a lot of tensions, as it usually is when there is leading across generations, or in our case, leading together across two different genders and two different personalities. So in that particular case, there is something that the father said that boils down to roles, purpose, and discipline, meaning being able to identify lanes and knowing whose lanes or whose role or which hat to wear in a specific context while still being
Right.
yourself. Um, and these things are not separate. Our family values inform how the company is run, and the efficiency of how well we run the company, and how well we collaborate as a team of husband and wife, sets the tone and sets the atmosphere for our broader team dynamics as a company. So something that the father said in that particular moment was when there was a back and forth between the boomer and the Gen Z. The son was so eager and so energetic in trying to project some PowerPoint slides in those ancient days, trying to deliver a proposal that he felt was a lot more superior to what his father was actually instructing or what do you call it, or issuing as an instruction. The son did not even notice that the father was no longer suggesting or was no longer what do you call it, collecting data. He has already made the executive decision. So the father said, you know what, my son, you need to remember this, that when it comes to matters of the kingdom, I am your king. I'm not your dad. So that was a very sobering moment in that documentary. And you know what? Pretty being my wife, but when it comes to her putting on the hat of the tech lead of EFAMA, who is a certified solutions architect and cloud expert, and who is well versed in the 45 technologies that make up the genetic DNA that is EFAMA, I have to often be courteous and be mindful that she's operating within the office of the tech lead. So I tend to confer the superpowers of making final technical executive decisions to her. And now, when it comes to the chief executive role of EFAMA, even though we are both co founders, and interestingly, we are both certified solutions architects, we are both certified in cloud, but I just chose to look at stakeholder relations. I chose to look at investor relations. I chose to look at talent relations and other aspects. It just works effectively when we play to our strengths. So, working as husband and wife, be very, very clear on what your strengths or superpowers are. And it's in the best interest of the family and the company for each of you to play to your strengths and not try, but me, I like being a tech lead, or I like this, or I like, it's no longer about what you like. It's about what's in the best interest of the family and what's in the best interest of the company and the best interest of the team and the best interest of the golden person in the room, the farmer and the buyer. So it's no longer about ourselves. So that's how we get to work together, by maintaining what do you call it? By maintaining that accountability partner dynamic. Yes, she's my wife, but she's also my accountability partner. So how well am I doing as a CEO of EFAMA? How well am I doing as a co-founder of EFAMA? Am I just filling this chair, or am I delivering value? It's in my best interest for her to be brutally honest with me. If she's not, then the investors that are incoming may not be so kind. They might even be tempted to use a colorful language when they are giving feedback of how I'm doing during a performance appraisal of how EFAMA is doing, and vice versa. However, that honesty or that accountability partner has to come from a good place. I can't be attacking her while I'm claiming to be helping her improve. That applies when I wear the hat of a husband. That applies when I wear the hat of a co-founder. Am I having her best interest in mind and heart? And am I having the best interest of the greater whole in mind and heart? Her interest and the interest of the company don't have to compete. They should be one and the same thing, because she and I are putting the company first before our own interests. So if we are synergizing around that and the family values, then her interest or her wish list, her personal wish list, doesn't have to be at collusion cost with the family's interest or family goals. That's why it's important, if you're going to work together as husband and wife, to agree on three things: family, finances, and faith. Because those three will inform or will play out in the boardroom, will play out in the engineering unit, will play out on your joint career journey. Be clear on finances, on faith, and be clear on your family values, because family is what anchors what you do out there. If maybe things are not okay at home, you know how in certain dangerous television programs they say, don't try this at home. I think if things are not okay at home, don't try out business like people that says, you know what? Maybe working together in business is going to heal our marriage. If the marriage is wounded, attend to the wound. Don't try and plaster or put a bandage on that marriage by saying we are a power couple in industry, we are working together, we're keeping it cool, we're keeping it real. That's not how it works. The foundation of who you are will inform the foundations of the outcomes or the things you build together or the things you learn together. So things need to be okay at home because you don't want things that are not okay at home to play out in the boardroom. Neither do you want to take work home. When you're at work, just be true to the roles that you are at work and try not to take work home because at home you need to switch heads and be the husband, the father, the friend, the best friend, if I dare say, or the wife. So be clear and be disciplined to those roles. Know when you are supposed to be doing what and be true to it. Try not to take work home and try not to take home to the office. The only time where we are allowed to take home to the office is when we are true to our family values with whatever we are building or whatever we are learning and whatever direction we are growing. Our business growth has to ultimately inform our family growth and vice versa.
Yeah, so I think on my side, careers are very difficult because we want to do what we are passionate about. But I often tell people that are going into career to say begin with an end in mind. So whenever I speak with someone who's just about to choose a career, I'm often say, let's bring a vision board. Where would you like to live? How much would you like to earn? But then if you're picking a career that doesn't match what you want to do at the end of the day, because remember, we're not just working for passion, we're working so that we can live better, we can improve our countries, we can improve our families. So I hope that one day, whatever it is that you're passionate about, it also brings the value, the amount of money that you need to live a certain lifestyle. So trying to balance that to say, work in reverse, to say, you know what, in 10 years from now, this is a car I would like to drive. This is a home that I would like to try to live in. Therefore, what career should I pursue that will pay me in that level? Because later on, I come across certain people who desired a certain lifestyle, but they were not sure. They were not told in the beginning that, you know, like, if you take a job, like for example, I don't know, I don't even understand why the teaching career, why teachers are paid so little. Because they launch all of our careers. But sometimes in the area where we live, you won't find a teacher because for some reason our countries have decided to pay teachers very, very little. So if you're passionate about teaching, but you want to live in Santin, it's not matching what you're passionate about versus what you actually want to come home to. So you may need to have a look into like, okay, the career I'm choosing, will it provide me with the life I would like to live when I'm like, say, 50 years old, 60 years old? Would I see myself earning in that bracket? Would I be satisfied if I live in this certain area? So I think that is very important to link career that we choose and the lifestyle that we want to live.
I had a privilege when I was in school to be gifted with the book by the late Nelson Mandela. The book's title is called Long Walk to Freedom. Excuse me. And it is 700, more than 700 pages. And I still remember consuming that book in less than a week. I was done with the entire book alongside my schooling studies. I was done with that book in 1 week. I was done with 700 pages. And one of the things I took away, two things I took away that are relevant to this discussion. I had loads of things, but two things. The first one is one of the speakers at the late Nelson Mandela's wedding said this to his bride, the late Winnie Madikizela Mandela. The person stopped addressing the waiting crowd and spoke directly to the young bride And what he told that young bride, I think, will resonate with those that are those professionals anywhere on the globe or even across Pan Africa that are shaping their career pathways now, whether early or middle or even advanced stage. The speaker looked the young bride, Winnie, in the eye and said, Winnie, I've got news for you. You are getting married to an already married man. Now, as you can imagine, that struck a chord in Winnie, and it had the waiting guest. Even if somebody was having an enjoyment of pudding, or somebody was maybe taking some selfies, if even those selfies were not there, it stopped everybody dead in their tracks because the late Nelson Mandela did not come across as a polygamist. So, what was this speaker talking about when he was saying, Winnie, you are getting married to an already married man? He went on to elaborate because he was in the struggle for freedom in South Africa alongside Nelson Mandela. He said, you are marrying a man that is already married to the cause of South Africa's struggle. It lives in his vein. It's what he breathes. It's what he eats. Some days he'll even deny himself food because he's just consumed about this cause of South Africa's freedom. I think maybe 99.9% of our audiences here at Career Pathway may not be politicians. If I was to be practical, however, my question is, are you married to your cause? Are you passionate about your profession or your trade? Are you consumed? Does it keep you awake? Because if it doesn't, you're going to have a difficult time convincing the hiring manager to either employ you or retain you or promote you. So make sure that what you picked or what you're about to pick now or what you're about to diversify into, whether AI or some other angle, it's something you thought soberly about and it's something that you are passionate about, because passion cannot be faked. People can try and fake many things. There's even this way of people using AI to fake themselves online or take fake photos or all these things. But you can never fake passion, and you can never fake solid, consistent results. Those results will be a result of what you are passionate about, where you are passionate enough to learn loads and loads of things about that particular area, to be passionate enough to build your career even when it's not popular and when it's not easy. So that's the one thing I took away from Long Walk to Freedom, that even those that are what do you call it, building career pathways, they all need to have a mindset of somebody that is married to a cause, married to a profession, to a point where your profession is your calling. So be consumed by it when it's easy, when it's difficult, when the awards are coming, and when awards are not coming. You still need to be true to your true north. And the second thing, Nelson Mandela was quoted at the back of that book, where he said, when he summited a mountain of his long walk to freedom and he came out of jail and he was inaugurated as the first president of the Democratic Republic of South Africa, he said something along the lines of, it dawned on him that becoming South Africa's first democratic president was the equivalent of summiting a mountain. When he summited that mountain, it came into full view that there are other mountains to be summited. So I don't know about you, dear professional, whether you finished school and that's what you submitted, whether you graduated in your first bachelor's degree, maybe that's what you submitted, maybe you collected the first 5 years of service as a recognition, maybe that's your summit. But either way, there are more mountains to be summited. Maybe you are the best accountant in your profession or you're the best engineers, but word to the wise, there are more mountains to be summited that are emerging within your side. Maybe you were untouchable, but with AI and machine learning and all these emerging technologies shaking up things, they are bringing into full view other mountains to be summited. The question is, do you have the stamina and the preparedness to learn and to reimagine how you are building so that you can continue growing. Growth is not guaranteed to those that are not willing to learn or those that are not willing to reimagine what they're building and why they're building. So my word to the wise is remember, in a parting note, as a family, we are a Christian family, and I believe that there's a diversity of religious beliefs in the room, which we respect. However, as a family, one of the anchoring career-related scriptures is promotion comes from God, not from the north, not from the south, not from the east, not from the west, meaning God is the auditor. When Adeola or Pretty or Shadrack are not looking at your performance, the maker of heaven and earth is still monitoring you, is still auditing you, not just on the project board or on the productivity app, but also monitoring your heart's most hidden intentions. Do you mean well towards Adeola, the HR executive? Do you mean well towards the startup founder? So we are all being audited. Even as when we receive investor monies or we receive customer revenue, we are being audited. So let us be worthwhile of that audit as we attempt to summit the mountains that are emerging on our horizon. And I wish them well, all these professionals that are tapping into career pathways and they're intentionally learning and intentionally building with growth in mind.